Hey, Motorman here. If you're not familiar with this channel, I'm a motor officer instructor. I'm the maker of the Ride Like a Pro video, the biggest selling motorcycle video in the world. I also have over 20 schools around the country and even one in Japan. If you're interested in taking the course at one of my schools, just go to ridelikeapro.com and click on trading locations, or for my school, Classes with Motorman. But look what I've got for you today. This is a 2021 Street Bob 114. If you would, camera guy, just walk around the bike and show it to him. And it has what we call first day changes. That means there's a few things added to it. That's a saddleman seat. It's got the Harley Davidson mustache crash bars, sissy bar, stage 1 download, and Vance & Hines pipes that came with the bike. It is practically brand new. It's got about 60 miles on it. I've had it about a week, but been kind of busy. So I'm going to do a little video on this, and what we're going to do is compare it to this motorcycle right here, this Triumph Bobber, because they are both bobbers. They call this a Street Bob, and this is called the Triumph Bobber. As you can see, it says it right on the side, on the panel there. It says Bobber, in case you thought maybe it was a touring bike. It isn't, it's a Bobber. Price-wise, these are about $13,500. The Street Bob with ABS. This bike does have ABS, and that's why it was a little difficult to find. In fact, here in the state of Florida, had to get this up from Miami. Purchased it at Seminole Harley Davidson. They got the bike for me, and it's with ABS and not counting the extras that have been put on this motorcycle, it's right about $15,700. Now, to me, when I ride both of these bikes, this feels much quicker because it's got so much more torque. But you're talking about 88 horsepower and 670 pounds versus 78 horsepower on the Triumph and about 500 pounds. So we're going to do a couple of roll-ons. We'll see performance-wise the difference in both of the motorcycles, and I'll give you my feelings on this Street Bob, because, well, just taking it for a little 10-mile road test really doesn't tell you a whole lot, but if you spend a couple hours on the motorcycle, it tells you a lot more. So let's go for a ride. For those of you who don't know, Joe is my security bodyguard and you know, most of the time bodyguards are like 6'4", 240. He's 5'4" and 175, but I pay him less because, you know, he's a smaller size, so you don't want to pay full price. You don't need it. Right, as I said, this bike has Vance & Hines pipes, and they are mufflers, slip-on mufflers, but they are kind of loud. If you're just cruising along, no problem. But when you even throttle it just a little bit, yeah, it gets pretty loud. Now, the seat on this bike is a Saddleman step-up seat, and it is superior to the stock seat. The stock seat that comes with this is a solo seat with a tiny little pillion pad, and rumor has it that that pillion pad used to be used in Guantanamo to get confessions out of the terrorists. So the chances of you getting the wife on there are pretty slim. But with this seat, it's pretty comfortable. I haven't taken a long ride on this seat, but I could just tell immediately, you know, in a 20 or 30 mile ride, that the Saddleman seat is the way to go. It is superior to the stock seat. Adjustments I've made on this bike is because it's got the mini apes. I loosened the 4 bolts here, pulled the handlebars back a bit so they're a little bit closer to me. I could go closer, but with this between the adjustment I have now and the Saddleman seat, it's a nice, comfortable position. The ride on this bike is it's not plush, but it is pretty good. I would say almost as good and maybe as good as the touring motorcycles, the Harley touring bikes. The ride on the Triumph Bobber is very firm. Both of these bikes are made for, you know, short trips around town. Of course, with this motorcycle and in the Triumph as well, you could add saddlebags You could make it into a touring bike, but that's not really what they're meant for. These are meant for short rides, commuting around town, bar hoppers, if you want to call them that. And as I said, when you get on back to back from bike to bike, this bike feels like it's a lot faster than the Triumph. But that's mainly because I believe it's just got so much more torque down low. The Triumph starts to feel fast when you get to 3,500 RPMs and above. It really takes off. This one takes off right from idle. It appears that both of the transmissions are 6 speeds on both of them. They're both wide ratio transmissions. You can cruise around town in third or fourth gear, no problem. You want to get above about 55, 60 before you get into 6th gear on this bike. It's got enough torque for that. The Triumph, you need to get around 70 miles an hour before it feels comfortable in 6th gear. As far as handling, nimbleness, I would give the edge to the Triumph because it's got a shorter rake than this bike. This has a 30-degree rake. I would say the lean angle is pretty close. I think this bike is 28 degrees, Harley quotes. And when they give you that quote, I'm not sure if they mean that's the time the pegs start to scrape the ground at 28 degrees, because the pegs do fold up. So before you hit any hard parts, you probably got to get to about 34 degrees before the muffler or the frame starts to hit the ground. We're going to try some roll-ons and see what it's like, because a drag race from a dead stop, what really matters is who gets out of the hole fastest and who gets through the quarter mile the quickest. But in real world, it's the roll-on performance that makes the difference. In other words, passing power, taking off from, say, 2nd gear as you're passing someone. That was a 2nd gear roll-on, and as I suspected, because this bike has so much more torque down low, it clearly pulls right away from the Triumph. Then the Triumph starts to catch up. That was a 3rd gear roll-on from about 30 miles an hour. And again, this bike pulls right away from the Triumph. Now this test may not be fair because we're not letting it really wind out. I'm trying to keep this bike under 4,000 RPM. Triumph is pretty much broken in by now. But as I said, torque is what you feel. And torque is what gives you passing power without having to downshift too much. There's probably some turbo 4-cylinder cars that may be faster or have more power. However, they certainly don't feel that way because it takes a while for those smaller motors to rev up. For that turbo to get spooling. Which would I rather have as far as torque or high RPM power? I think I'd take the torque. It's just more fun. And the power is immediate. realistically, you can't go wrong with either motorcycle. They are both tons of fun to ride. And keep in mind that you're going to pay at least $2,000 more for this motorcycle, and that's not counting any dealer greed, because right now the 21 Street Bob with the 114 is a little hard to come by. At Seminole Harley, they did not take advantage of that, and as I said, they even located the motorcycle for me. Let's do a first gear roll on. Can you hear me? All right, so we'll get going about, I don't know, 15 or 20. I'll do the head thing. That time the back tire spun. Are you in first? All right, let's switch bikes. As far as styling goes, it's got to be a personal thing, because, you know, I like the looks of both motorcycles. I think this, the Triumph, is definitely more of a classic bobber look, even though the rear fender isn't actually bobbed. Yeah, I'm gonna.
I can't hear.
You getting whacked with the bugs?
Oh, it's too loud. Too much wind. I can't stand no windshield. On this bike, without a windshield, I'm out.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
That's because you're old.
Yeah. Admit my flaws.
So let me say that, you know, these are just fun motorcycles to ride. I would say that I give the Bobber a 9, but I gotta give this Harley a 10. Now you may I hear a lot of people say that I'm a Harley fanboy. Harleys fit my needs, especially the touring bikes. As I said, 95% of the people that come to my class are on Harley touring bikes, and that's why I ride one. If there was other bikes that fit my needs better, I'd be riding one of those. I have no stock in the company, but I do like that big V-twin feel. Torque is just great, and I think this would be a 10. Well, that would be a 9. As far as styling, man, I think I like the Triumph Bobber styling. It's more classic to my eye than this bike. Is this worth $2,000 more? Well, it depends on how you look at it. Probably if you look at resale wise, I'm betting this motorcycle will have better resale than the Triumph. And of course, as far as dealers around the country, yeah, there's about 700 Harley dealers and maybe 150 Triumph dealers. I'm just guessing at that, Triumph dealers, but I know they are few and far between. So yeah, I would take this bike. I would spend the extra $2,000 over the Triumph Bobber.